One of the most common questions we are asked is, how do I create better models in 3D? And it doesn't matter what software you're using. It's Blender, Plasticity, Maya, it doesn't matter. The question is always the same. How do I create better models? And usually it comes from new users, but also intermediate and even some advanced users. So in this video, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring you through 5 steps of modeling that's going to hopefully help you to kind of organize this sort of a process in your head and make it more easy to understand and simple to follow. Let's go. To make the process of creating 3D models easy to understand, we're going to break it down into 5 stages. Stage 1 is going to be blockout, stage 2 is going to be detailing, stage 3 is going to be refinement, stage 4 is going to be maths, and stage 5 is going to be rendering. I'm going to bring you through my process and show you how I approach it, and hopefully it's going to give you some interesting insight and help you improve, the way you model in 3D. Now, if you're new to Blender and you're still struggling with the UI, the tools, you don't understand how it all works, the modifiers, you're confused about shading, topology, and all that, we have a fantastic course which is called Hard Surface Accelerator. It's superb. We have several thousand students, hundreds upon hundreds of testimonials, and people love it. The reason why they really like it is because it's organized, very simple to understand, and it's going to teach you everything you need to know and none of the fluff. We explain the UI, the tools, the whole process, modeling. There's a whole section on design. There's a whole section on rendering, editing, etc. So this course is going to bring you from the very beginning, from the early stages when you open Blender and you don't even know how to move a cube, to creating your first portfolio piece. So if you're interested, click on the link in the video description, and if you do it now, you're going to get 50% off the deal. So go ahead, click the link in the video description and enjoy the course. Going back to our video, let's talk about stage number 1, which is blockout. Blockout is the most important stage of modeling, and if you're going to neglect it, if you're not going to pay enough attention and care when you're creating blockouts, and you're not going to be able to create a well-balanced, proportioned blockouts, you will never become good at modeling. You will never become a good artist, because blockouts are the base of everything. It's just like a backbone for a human. If someone has scoliosis, the curve, kind of like a crooked back, even if they go to gym and build muscle and get ripped, it doesn't matter, because you're gonna beach and you're still crooked. Okay, your silhouette is still messed up. So you gotta fix the backbone and then start working on details, which is muscle. If you're going to slap details on a model that's not properly balanced and not well proportioned, the gravity point is off, etc., it's not going to look good. Doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to look good. Now, in order to create good blockouts, you need to understand how to perceive or see world in primitive shapes. So cubes, cylinders, spheres, and cones. You need to train your brain to simplify everything to primitive shapes. That's going to allow you to create blockouts. Second thing that's really essential is to learn how to work from references. You need to gather references, study them, and use them when you create your models. It's really important. It's going to teach you correct balance. It's going to help you to develop your own style, but also it's going to help you to get better at blockouts, because once you know how to simplify things in your brain to primitive shapes, you can look at professional design, simplify it in your head, and sort of create your own original ideas based off of that. So that's really important. And if you're not going to follow these 2 steps, you will never be good at creating blockouts. So again, simplify everything in your head to primitive shapes and follow references. Okay, use references when you work. Now I want to show you what I mean on this example. This is a hover bike from Star Citizen, and you can clearly see that we have a lot of details. I mean, there's a lot of decals, cuts, all that. And it's really confusing to look at this and think in primitive shapes. So I'll show you what happens when you're going to start stripping all these layers, off of this bike. So you see, like, this is, for example, a layer of decals. We can just grab that and nuke it. So X and delete it. We can delete all these, and you can slowly see how, this model is being cleaned up from all the stuff that's actually polluting the vision. You see that now, how much cleaner this is, how much more simple this is. And we can, keep going here and just nuke all these decals and make it, a bit more simple. And this is how you need to start thinking, kind of like imagining in your brain, how to simplify all these shapes you're looking at. Another way of simplifying what you're looking at would be to create a silhouette in Photoshop. So let me show you what I mean. Let's go to the top view here, and I'm going to select these and move them somewhere here, and then I'm going to select these and move them somewhere here, and then I'm going to do the same thing with these. So now we can render this in viewport. So go to viewport, render image, right, and save it as a PNG, and then grab this PNG and bring it to Photoshop. With this model here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a background, right? So let's just add a white background, and this one we're going to change it to black outline, and now you can clearly see the design language of the model and all the details. It's still a bit overwhelming, so you can clean it up a bit further, but simply applying a mask and running a black brush on it like this, okay? And you can simplify it to, to some very basic, basic shapes, right? It doesn't have to be, super accurate. It's just more or less following the design of this model, right? So something like this here, and we just clean these. There we go. And the same here, you could just clean it up, with a brush. And once you do that, you're gonna get a better understanding of how, what kind of shapes form this whole object. What are the proportions of the shape? Because it's really important. Proportion of these engines or whatever it is towards this, main chassis, right? And then you can create silhouettes from different angles, so like side view, back view, front view, top view. Just like if you were, creating a car in sub D, and you were using you were using blueprints and then projecting edges on top of blueprints to recreate the car. Now this is a little bit more difficult because we're not going to be using it as a blueprint. We have it somewhere on the side. You can put them in a pure ref, and you can use them as a reference, right, including the model. And then you can start creating the basic shapes in 3D. So you go back to Blender and you start with a cube, right? So you're gonna add a cube, and then you can start slicing it with, whatever, box cutter or something. So let's create this shape in the front, right? You're gonna, let's say there's a kind of like a divider here. So this is gonna be a little bit shorter, something like this, right? And in fact, shorten that. There we go. Somewhere here, and then obviously it's gonna be less thick. And then you can start cutting it, to the shape. So you can start creating the basic outline of, of the model you want to create. You can mirror this, obviously, right? And you got more or less, the front shape. It's a little bit too thick. You see, you can narrow it down. It looks a bit like a coffin. And then, you start slicing the front. So, you could grab a box cutter and start slicing the front. Make it maybe a little bit even thinner than this, maybe this is a bit too thick. Slice it here, and start building this basic shape. And once you have this basic shape, okay, this kind of a more or less the outline of the model, and you got, the rear part, all these engines. It doesn't have to be accurate. It's just a placeholder for the proportions. Remember that. Then on top of this, you're going to start refining the blockout, okay? And that's a second stage of blockout, is refining the blockout, making sure that all these elements work together and they create a cohesive whole, and they make sense in terms of proportions, balance, gravity center and all that, right? Once you have this one, you are ready to proceed to stage 2. And stage 2 is going to be detailing. And detailing is going to be divided into 3 parts, okay? It's going to be primary detail, secondary detail, and tertiary detail. So if you look here at this element, you can clearly see that, this outer shape is very detailed. There's a lot of cuts and different elements. And again, you might be getting confused, but you need to start thinking, just keep thinking about these basic shapes. So all you need to do when you're entering the detailing stage and you start creating primary details, what you do is you're breaking down the blockout shape, okay? You're breaking it down to smaller elements to kind of flesh out larger components of this blockout, of this shape, of this model, right? So a primary detail for this top here, for example, is gonna be this cut here, this one, okay? So the cut that goes here, down, and here, this cut. This is a primary detail, okay, because it sort of defines the blockout. It makes it a bit more fleshed out. That's all that primary details do. And the key here, okay, it's not to start detailing deeper in this area. So you don't want to go and create a secondary detail like this one. This is secondary detail, or even tertiary detail, which is going to be this one. You don't want to do that, because then you're going to be losing the whole view of your own model, right? What you want to do, you want to first redefine the block out of the entire model, moving from one part to another constantly, okay? Rotating your model. You want to rotate it to make sure that it's balanced from all angles. This is really essential. Don't focus just in one area. It's a very common mistake made by rookies, and also a lot of even intermediate artists. They focus on one area, and then they sort of lose the sight of the entire model, and it's going to be very difficult for them to A, create similar style of details in other areas of the model, and B, if you're going to make a mistake, you want to change your mind, you want to go back, you're going to be very difficult for you to remove these details, because now you're going to have to spend time on removing something you added. You see what I mean? So what you want to do is you want to gradually cut into your model. Imagine as if you were creating a sculpture. You don't sculpt hair first, you just sculpt the mass of hair, and then you sculpt waves of locks, and then you sculpt hair. So you divide it into stages to cut deeper into the model. But you don't focus just on the head, you focus on the head and the torso, then the feet. You gradually get into the model deeper and deeper. And here's the irony: if you're going to add primary details to entire model, rotate it around and see what fits, what doesn't fit, etc., the placement of secondary details is going to reveal itself automatically, because the model will tell you where to place details. If you're going to follow the rules of design, which by the way are fleshed out in detail in Accelerator course, about which I told you in the beginning. So again, go and get the course, click the link in the video description and grab it. It's a fantastic course. It will teach you not just modeling, but also the principles of design, which are essential. And if you understand the principles of design, they will tell you where to place the details. And all you need to do is follow the style of your model in a smaller scale. That's all it is, okay? So if you see how simple it is, you just have to simplify it in your head. So instead of being overwhelmed and looking at the entire map of Tokyo, right, just focus on the shape of the city, then shape of the districts, and then specific buildings, etc. Because if you look at the map of Tokyo and you try to understand all the details, good luck to you, because it's not going to happen unless you're autistic, okay? Then the last one is obviously tertiary detail. That's when you start adding these small screws, bolts. And again, if you have primary details in place, you have secondary details in place, tertiary details is going to be no problem, because you will know exactly when to put them. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are stuck on detailing stage thinking, where the hell should I add next detail? If you're going to do this correctly and follow these steps, the model will tell you where you need to add details. That's how easy it is. And with practice, and again, with watching references, studying them and building a visual library, everything's going to come together. Now, it's not going to happen in a day or two. Obviously, you need some time and practice, but it's the nature of things. You need to practice everything in order to become good at it. So you're going to have some failures, you're going to have some mistakes. I had them too. I had models that I started and just ditched, or restarted them multiple times, even for the courses sometimes. I make a block out and I don't like it. Now I give an example, the plasticity course, which we released recently. You can get them on our website too. There was a ship model, and I spent probably a few days creating just a basic fuselage of this ship, because I wanted to make sure it's perfectly proportioned for what I want. I wanted a silhouette to sell this sportsy feel, this kind of like an extending bonnet of a sports car from the 60s or or 70s, like a Jaguar or Corvette, right? A Stingray, that kind of a feel. So the bonnet is really long, there's a small cabin and a back massive engines and all that, so it looks more agile, sportsy, right? So the basic shape was so important for me. I spent literally several days redoing this, re-recording it until I got it right, okay? So don't feel bad that you're gonna fail. Everyone does. It's not about failing, it's about getting up and keep on going. Stage number 3 is refinement. It's a really important stage, and it kind of spills on both ends of the spectrum. So it spills on the modeling, detailing, but also texturing and rendering, which is why I placed it in the middle. Now, refinement is really essential, especially when you finish modeling, finish detailing. You want to assess if everything is fine. and refine if it isn't. So you go in, you check all the details, all the modifiers, also geometry, shading, and all these problems. And you want to make sure that everything is peachy for the texturing and rendering phase. Because if it isn't, it doesn't matter how good you're going to be with texturing or lighting. If your model has some issues, it will just simply not look good in a render. So you want to make sure everything is fine, refine everything if it isn't, and you're going to be good to go. So usually what I do, I go in, I check, the modifiers, all the details. Sometimes you're in the frenzy of, modeling, and you go in, you over detail something, or you overdo certain details, or you're maybe going to go with a style that doesn't fit. You want to just look from all angles, different perspectives, like orthographic perspective, etc. See if everything is, peachy. And then you want to make sure if the geometry is fine, the shading is fine, the bevels are not overlapping, there is no hollow, no hollow faces, there's no issues with some rogue geometry, etc., Z fighting, whatever. So you want to make sure everything is fine. You want to also make sure that all the decals, if you place them, are actually visible, they're not sinking into the mesh, etc., etc. So the refinement stage is kind of like a wrap-up stage. But like I said, it also spills onto texturing and rendering and post-processing. And what I mean by that is I oftentimes, render something, I put it in Photoshop, I don't like it, so I go back and I redo either the lighting, framing, composition, or maybe even texturing, decals, etc. And I give you a practical example. I actually used that most recently in the plasticity course when I was rendering the ship, and I was rendering it from a specific angle, and the alignment of decals didn't really fit my composition and the distribution of details, okay? So I went in and I actually adjusted decals and all the details in a specific area just for that one shot. Other times what I may do is, for example, lift the value of the material so the matte is going to be brighter, and with the same intensity of lighting, you're gonna get brighter model. I did that actually in the tutorial I recorded for NVIDIA Studio, I think 2 years ago. You can still see it on their channel. But I've done that over there, that trick, and it really helped me with maintaining this kind of like a deep sunset, of a low angle lighting, and simply making the ship brighter so you can see more details. So you need to go back and forth in the refinement stage and make sure that everything is correct for the render you want to create, or for the series of render you want to create. And refinement is going to be, like I said, spilling on both ends of spectrum, so it's going to be applicable to the blockout stage, detailing stage, texturing stage, and rendering stage. Now next stage, which is stage 4, is going to be texturing. You want to add textures to your model. Now it's really important how you're going to add these textures, right? If you look at this vessel here, it's from Star Citizen as well. This is vessel called Mole. It's a mining vessel from Argo. And pay attention how the colors are distributed and how many colors you can see. I see 3 colors. It's the saturated color, the black color, and then white for the decals for accents. So you got 2 main colors on the vessel, and then you got accents. And this is a really good way of texturing. I wouldn't go more than 4. Okay, if there's more than 4 colors, you're doing it wrong most of the time. Because if you're gonna overdo materials and colors, you're gonna have a bad day at Disney, okay? Look at this model. The dominating color is this saturated one, and then you have these elements that break this whole structure with black colors, right? You got these beautiful massive covers, and then the engines. You got these elements around the engines here defining the edges, these rims. And then this element here cutting into the roof, but you can clearly see that the dominating color is this saturated color, right? And then you got accents in white, which are decals. And again, if you're going to texture properly and detail properly, and your model has the right balance of details, the right design language, the tertiary details, which are decals in this case, they're gonna place themselves. You naturally will know, you feel where they should go, right? So the way I approach texturing is very simple. I apply one texture to the entire model. It's easier this way, because if you look at this model, it's very difficult to, if this model wasn't texture, it was just pure, I can actually open it for you in Blender because I have the blend file. And don't ask me to send you the blend file because I can't, okay? So, I'm gonna grab this and open it. We actually reached out to a legal department of Star Citizen and asked them for the permission to run a video on this. And so, you know, we can't share this stuff with you, I'm sorry. But anyway, if you look at this, if you were supposed to start, you know, texturing from here, you're gonna get really overwhelmed. This is just, it's just too much going on. It's crazy, right? And there's no way you're gonna be able to even start imagining what color should be going where. So the way I texture in Blender, I simply apply one color to the whole model first, the main color, and then I'm breaking this color with a color that's gonna be complementing that color, obviously, but it's gonna be standing out and sort of cutting into the model. You're gonna be breaking this monotony of the basic color, which is exactly what I did here with the black. And once this is finished, then you can start adding details in form of decals, which in this case are white. Okay, so that's how it's supposed to be done. And by the way, this texturing here in the decals may not be super accurate. This model can look a little bit different in game because we weren't able to recover all the details correctly in Blender, but more or less this should look like a model in game. So again, you apply the color to the model, one color, then you break it with a secondary color, and then you add, you know, tertiary color. So guys, it's the same principle as with detailing. You got primary color, secondary color, tertiary color. You see what I mean? So if you're gonna follow this simple rule, your model is gonna look amazing. And then technically you could use BSDF mattes in Blender, but they're not really that good, and you also have to, you know, go into node system, which is annoying, which is why we developed our add-on Material Works, which is fantastic, thousands of copies sold. And now this add-on works with decals and decal machine, so you can, you know, slap decals, slap a color, slap wear and tear, and it's just one-click deal, and you can texture and detail your models way quicker than in vanilla Blender. So I would highly recommend you grab the add-on. Link is in the video description, and now we're running an interesting promo on that, so I suggest you look into Platinum version, which comes with 900 decals and trim sheets, which are fantastic quality. The last stage of modeling is rendering and also post-processing. Now, if you're going to neglect rendering, if you think rendering isn't important, you are gonna have a hard time finding jobs, finding clients, because renders on your portfolio is your business card. And let me tell you, the better the packaging, the better it goes. If you go to a supermarket, you're gonna see some crappy, you know, pack of whatever, and the really amazing packaging for product you're looking for. Guess what? You're gonna be drawn to the one that looks amazing because you feel that it's better quality. It's psychology. You want to have polished renders, and you can't have them without knowledge of post-processing. So both of these steps, rendering and post-processing, are equally important. Now, in order to render something really well, you need to understand lighting, camera work, framing, composition, visual weight, visual anchors, negative space, all that, highlights, shadows. It's a lot of knowledge, and we do have a course on that, which is a really, really good course. I packed 20 plus years of experience in visual art into that course, and it's called Rendering University. And no, I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm simply telling you what you should get because it's really good. There's a section on theory, there's a section on design, there's a section on practical approach, two actually sections. One of them is massive. It's compositing in Blender and Photoshop. There's a post-processing section, there's lighting section, reflectors, IES lights, everything is explained. And I share with you a lot of tips and tricks in order to create amazing renders. And rendering doesn't have to be complicated. 99% of my renders on my portfolio I created with one single light, maybe a reflector. That's it. Give me one light, a reflector, and I'm good. For example, this image here you see on the screen, that's my render, and I rendered it in Blender using one single light and possibly a reflector. I can't remember, but that's it. You don't need more than this. If I were to give you one tip in order to create better renders, is gonna be make sure that your lighting matches the details on your vessel. What I mean by that is, on this example here, going back to this mole, you see I use a diffuse light in order to render this ship. Two reasons. One, because it wasn't supposed to be a render that's gonna be, you know, storytelling render. It's supposed to be a render that's gonna be depicting the vessel in the actual state, you know, all the details true to its form, right? Secondly, I didn't want to create additional details with highlights and shadows because there is a lot of details on this vessel already. So it would distort the design language, see? So there's a purpose behind this lighting. But for example, in this render of the ship from Plasticity, I went for a very dramatic lighting because it was supposed to be just a storytelling render of, the ship just before takeoff, or some kind of a airstrip or some landing pad or whatever, right? So you see, and also the framing you see is different. It's very horizontal, very cinematic, whereas this one is 16:9, and just to showcase the entire vessel. What I'm trying to explain to you is that you need to understand what kind of lighting, what kind of light quality you want to use for what model in which situation. And obviously this is going to come with practice, but this is something I would pay attention to. Also remember that lighting is going to carry color. So for example, this lighting, since it's diffused, goes through clouds, is a bit more blue, so it's a bit more toned down. And sunlight, for instance, is going to carry, a bit of a yellow color with it. So if you're going to have something that's warm, sunlight's going to amplify it, over saturated. This is why when you look outside the window, when it's sunny, everything is blooming because sun is amplifying the green. And when it's cloudy, everything looks dull, like North Korea, do you know what I mean? So you need to understand the differences between quality of light, color of light, and all these aspects of rendering, and it's a lot of them. So again, get the Rendering University, because this course is packed with knowledge that you will need to create really good renders for your portfolio, and every single person who got that course got a tremendous value out of it. Now, lastly, don't forget post-processing, because post-processing is that final touch that's going to tell the viewer that you're not someone driven by half measures, but you actually bring in stuff to the end and you're proud of your work. That's actually what it says to the viewer. If I'm looking at the really good portfolio, that's what I'm seeing. Okay, I'm seeing, wow, this person really cares about his art, knows what he's doing, he's a pro. Okay, that's my my feeling when I'm looking at some really exceptional portfolio. So these are 5 stages of modeling. Got blockouts, detail, refinement, mattes, and rendering. Again, if you're a beginner or intermediate, look into our course, Hard Surface Accelerator. It's fantastic. It's going to teach you all the details about UI, tools, hard surface modeling, design, everything, rendering, and post-processing as well. So the whole process is explained that we talked about in this video. And it's a tremendous course, even if you're an intermediate student. We got thousands of students enrolled and hundreds upon hundreds of testimonials. You can check them on our website. All the testimonials, well, not all of them, but the ones that we managed to gather are viewable publicly on our website. There are screenshots from emails, Discord, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. All right, well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.